Hey everybody, my name is Nosvelo Kamganamayaba. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for your support. Your subscriptions mean so much to me. The channel is growing. It wouldn't be where it is without your support and love. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Today guys, I am bringing you yet another topic. I introduced this topic on social media probably about 2.5 weeks ago, and I know it took me a long time to finally do it because I just wanted to finalize a few things first and then concentrate on this particular topic. So I introduced HIV when it comes to children, whether or not should we be telling children about HIV in a case where maybe possibly it's a parent that's HIV positive or it's actually the child that's HIV positive. Is there an importance to do that? And I loved interacting with different people on the topic because that's what it's meant for. I don't like one particular view or everyone just agreeing with what I'm saying. So while other people were like, it's a very important issue because some people are faced with that difficulty of having to disclose either their own status as parents to their children or having to disclose their HIV status to an HIV status to children. And then others were like, not really. It's not important because do we disclose, other chronic diseases, when you have cancer, diabetes, any other chronic diseases, why are we going to treat HIV so differently to any other chronic diseases? So they felt like it's not important. As like normal guys, I always approach such topics from my own personal experiences, what I'm struggling with or what I've experienced to better share light around the topic. So it was only inspired, as you know, I went back home in Port Elizabeth a few weeks ago, and it dawned on me while I was busy spending some time with family that actually guys, we have never actually sat down with my nieces and told them about what happened to their mom. So I don't want to prolong this video or anything like that. I've told you this story. My mom and I are raising 3 girls. So what happened is that when I was born, my mom wanted someone that would take care of my brother and I. So she went back home. She made a deal with her cousin, distant cousin. Basically, the distant cousin had many children and she could not take care of her children. So they made a deal that she's going to take the oldest, of the children and to basically raise that child as she was raising her own children. So my mom took that child, came back with her to Port Elizabeth, and she basically was growing with us. And for a long time I never understood the dynamics of our relationship. I always thought she was my blood sister, similar to or my sibling rather, similar to my brother. It was only later that I got to understand the dynamic and the story of how she became part of our family. Anyway, so it was quite lovely. Like when I look at my childhood and how we all grew up, I remember walking to school with her. She was older than my brother, probably about 3-4 years older than my brother. We'll go to school together. She'll really take care of me. She'll be the first one to get up in the morning, wash me, get me ready for school, feed me, and all of those things. And then she started being obviously a teenager, started exploring with different things, and life happened, and she eventually moved out of our home to start, her own life, to start, taking care of her own self and all of that. And it wasn't long after she got pregnant with her first daughter, her firstborn. But life was hard because as soon as she moved out of our home, she quickly dropped out of school. She was also struggling academically. So that's why to some extent I do understand the story of dropping out. And she went and, looked for a job. She started selling stuff by the taxi rank, fell pregnant with the first daughter, but it was clear that she could not take care of the daughter. So when the daughter was about 2 years, I go more into the story in my book. When the daughter was about 2 years, she came knocking at our home, and she basically begged my mom and I to please take care of her daughter. And we didn't think twice, we took the daughter in. As I said, she was about 2, and she grew up with us. Anyway, it wasn't long until she got pregnant again with a second daughter, and then got pregnant again with her last born. So she basically in total had 3 daughters. So she took care of the 2 youngest, and at the time, I mean, she didn't really make decent living, so she used to rent a shack not very far from our house, and that's where she lived. And she will occasionally, and I mean occasionally, come and and look, come and see her daughter, the eldest one, but it was very rare. Anyway, so it wasn't long when we started hearing that my cousin is sick. And no, actually what had happened was there was a funeral. I can't remember, like a family member's funeral that we had attended, and that was the first time in a long time that we had seen her. And her health was just deteriorating. We didn't know anything that was going on with her up until that point where it was quite, obvious that there was something going on. And immediately the first thing we thought about was she's probably HIV positive. At what point where she was infected, we don't know. So we saw that her health was deteriorating, and the kids were being affected. I remember the youngest was still in like diapers, in nappies, and I still remember like she used to use like the cloth nappies that our mom used like many years ago, and she would take like a plastic and wrap like the youngest with or the nappy with the plastic bag, so that obviously it doesn't leak. And so it was tough. You can see that it was tough. So my mom took action. At that time my mom was still working. My mom took action immediately, organized a doctor's visit at the hospital where she was working. It was definitely, she was diagnosed that she was HIV positive. Once again, obviously we don't know like when was it when she, had the first daughter. We don't know. Anyway, she was put on treatment immediately, and then we decided, no, they're all gonna come and live, with us. So she came and lived. It was her, like the 3 daughters, my mom, myself, and at the time we were also living with 2 of my uncle's sons. So anyway, as soon as she got better, I guess it was also an element of she was so used to taking care of herself that it was quite difficult for her to transition to a point where she needs to be taken care of by someone else. So she left again. She left the oldest because obviously the oldest knows us, and she took the 2 youngest with her. So she left the household again. The next time we will hear about her was when my mom got a phone call that so-and-so is sick and she's in hospital. And we're like, okay, I mean, we had heard that she's not taking a pill, she's drinking excessively and all of those things, but we didn't think it was anything that bad. We thought she's probably sick, but we're hoping it's not anything bad. So when my mom and I arrived at the hospital, the doctor actually told us that they'd been waiting for us, and she had actually passed away 2 days before. My God, I don't even know why I'm getting emotional. Anyway, so we heard that she had passed away, and they'd been waiting for us so that we can identify the body and all of those things. So we proceeded with the funeral arrangements and all of that, and that's when we took the decision that we were going to take now the 2 daughters, basically take all the children, all the 3 daughters, to come and live with us. Last time I can remember us coming close in having a discussion about my cousin, with her daughters. I remember, I think it was a couple of months after we had, buried her, and the eldest was sleeping in another room, and my mom and I were watching TV in the lounge, and we heard her screaming, and we didn't understand what was going on. So we quickly went and checked, and we could see that she was still sleeping, but it seemed like she was fighting, and she was just basically having a nightmare. So we woke her up and we're asking her what's going on, what was happening, and she said she saw her mom, right? And we asked her what was she saying, and she said she didn't say anything. She was just in a dream, standing and looking at her, and I guess obviously she was scared about the whole thing. So in my mom's fashion, she didn't say anything further. She started praying. I love my mom, guys. She started praying. She started cursing everyone out, including my dead cousin, and the fact that there shouldn't be any evil spirits and all of those things, and she should stop haunting, her granddaughter and all of those things. And that was the end of it, to be honest. So obviously, as I said, when I went back home, I started really feeling strongly about there's something that we are lacking. And I wanted to bring this forth in terms of how do you feel about talking about HIV to your children? Now understanding, the story that I just shared, I'm hoping it's going to bring into light why I feel strongly about such a topic and why we need to have such difficult conversations with our children. In addition to this, I worked for an NGO many years ago. And one of the difficulties that I saw is in terms of, grandmothers that were looking after their grandchildren, particularly when their grandchildren, got infected during birth and they needed to obviously now take their ARVs, and having now the difficulty of explaining why they need to take a pill, for the rest of their life, and why are they so special that they need to take the pill and not their cousins or their brothers and sisters. And they'll often come to us, and ask for advice or want us to facilitate the whole process of disclosing an HIV status to a child. And we also need to understand that we are in a society where ideally we would love to live in a world where we're not victimized, we are not stigmatized because of our HIV status. Unfortunately, that is something where we are still moving towards too, and we are not yet there. Unfortunately, even today, HIV status, someone's HIV status is still being used against someone. Even in a case where, as I said, there's a caregiver taking care of, a grandmother that's taking care of their grandchild, and understanding the circumstances of how, the mother or the father passed away, that whole circumstance can be used against the child. And whether it's another family member or a neighbor or anyone in the community that feels a sense of disclosing the HIV status before the family actually does that. So that is why we need to be very careful and be in the forefront of such conversations to enable us and empower us and the rest of the family to take charge of such discussions, because really honestly people can use these stories in the worst manner and it can break families. Now you have a child that's in their teenage years resenting you for not telling them about their mom's death, or the fact that they were infected at birth, and all of those things. So the first thing that I've learned throughout this whole process is to, one, understand what the child knows about the whole situation, right? So in my case, when I was home, against my mother's blessing, by the way, because as I told you, my mom doesn't believe in the whole thing. I wanted to understand, do they even still remember their mom? And I'm talking about my three, nieces. So I asked the eldest one. She's about 15, 16 now, and she was like, I don't remember her. I forgot about her. I don't even remember how she looks like. And I understand where she's coming from, because as I said, she never grew up with her mom. As soon as she was 2 years, she was given to us. And then I asked the middle one, do you still remember your mom? Do you understand what happened to her? And she said she still remembers, and she now told, she started talking about how she saw, I'm even shaking, she saw her mom getting sick in front of her. So she was about 7 or 8, if I'm not mistaken, and she basically saw her mom deteriorating in front of her eyes. She even tells, constantly tells a story about, whenever she would need to relieve herself, she would have to, because they lived in a shack and obviously there was no sanitation for her to go, outside to use a bathroom. So she'll need to give her an ice cream container, and then for her to relieve herself, and then she will now after that need to go and throw that away. right? And she used to have to cook. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that, guys. And so she will need to really just take care of her mom up until a point where the people in the community saw what was happening, and she was taken from where they were living and to the hospital because they could see that she was really getting sick. So like years later, my cousin passed away 2014, 2015. She still remembers, and now she's in her teenage years, about 13, 14 if I'm not mistaken. So she still remembers that. To what extent is she hurt about the whole situation, or how it has impacted her, I guess is what we'll never know. And that's why it needs further intervention for us to better understand how she feels about the whole thing. And so what I'm trying to get out of this is that really try and open up a conversation about what do they understand. Now, there are different circumstances. You are sitting there, it may not even be a matter of your child, their parents passed away and they were left behind. It may even be a situation where the child themselves, is HIV positive. Understand what they currently know about HIV, and really try and really not be serious. Because I remember even when I was having the conversation, we were like in the lounge, in the TV lounge. They had just danced, by the way, for me, and they were having a good time dancing. And while we were still in that spirit, I started asking them, all of those questions. So create an environment where kids feel comfortable to have such conversations. But it is also very important to distinguish and really have an honest conversation before you even do that, and understand, are you actually the right person for to have that conversation with your child? Now, when it comes to parents, I am not a parent, but I'm talking from my experience of having, being raised by my mom, and her having said this in previous videos. She said something about, your parent will always be your best friend, and whenever you are dealing with something, your parent should be the first one to really discuss that with them. I agree 100%. However, there is a certain element where the parent is actually not the right person, or is equipped enough to be the right person to be the one driving this whole conversation. In such a case, it is okay to seek help in the form of a social worker, in the form of a psychologist, where they're going to be the mediator or the person that really facilitates the whole process of the child opening up about this whole thing. Now, I'm often asked, what is the right age to start talking about these things? I don't have the right answer for that. But what I do know is that the sooner you start this conversation, the better. And because it comes a situation where it's going to be harder and harder to have these conversations as the time goes by. And children in these days they mature they mature really fast. And by the age of 10, 11, they're exposed to so many different things. And while you're thinking that, no, they're still a child, they don't know anything, you do not understand how much they know and how much information they're exposed to. So for me, I always say the sooner the better, and it's about how you start. For example, you can even start with like a 5-6 year old. I'm not saying have a tough conversation of having to sit them down and tell them, okay, this is HIV, you're going to die, your immune system is compromised, and all of those different things. I remember one of the most powerful techniques that I learned, from Ubuntu, where I used to work. I loved how they narrated HIV to children. So basically, I would observe always how the mom was empowered of having a conversation with their child, and they're always empowered in such a way where, tell them like this. Everyone is built with like strong, soldiers inside their bodies. These strong soldiers are basically fighting off, any viruses that are coming to attack us from inside our bodies, and everyone has those soldiers, and to make sure that the soldiers continue to have the power and the energy to fight off all these bad guys, we need to take our pill. Similar to how when we don't eat, we get sick, this is how we need to empower the soldiers inside of us to make sure that they continue fighting on our behalf. So to do that, we must take a pill every day to make sure that we keep healthy. So basically, you show them your pill, and basically, let's say you give them, kids, take multivitamins and all sorts of things. So you continue on that journey of having to develop the conversation now as the time goes by. Now, obviously, children, they grow, they get exposed into different things, they get exposed into so much information. As soon as now they hit about 7 or 8, they may ask you now, okay, I understood the fact that now I needed to take medication and you needed to take the pill. But then if I want now my soldiers to be as strong as yours, can I take your pill? Because kids are very inquisitive. Like, they are going to notice, they may not notice when they're 5 or 4, but they're definitely going to notice when they're now 7 or 8 or 9 that why do you need to take a pill and I need to take like medication? And by medication, I need to take like liquid, multivitamins and all those things. If I want my soldiers to be as strong as yours, why can't I take the same pill that you are taking? Now, that's when the conversation now needs to progress, and it needs to suit a level where they are at. Unfortunately, I don't have the right answer for that because each child is different, and the level of information that they can process varies from one child to the next. So once again, you know your child best, and you know what the right information is about. But what I'm stressing and emphasizing is continue to keep the conversation open for them to understand what is going on. And as the years progress, you are going to now be able to even reference some of the things that you used to do when they were young. Do you remember when mommy needed to take that big pink pill and you needed to take the medication? Actually, that was done because I am HIV positive, and this is what it means 1, 2, 3, and I was basically introducing it to you. Now you're basically referencing back, and I can assure you that they can appreciate the fact that you have made strides in having this conversation, a normal conversation. I always even make a reference about how you can even let them be part of the routine, about when it's 8 o'clock, either you sing a song or anything, an alarm goes off and they immediately need to go and take your medication. It becomes a fun thing. The most important thing is do not make it so serious, because that's when it starts getting, you start scaring the child and they don't understand what is going on. Now, in our case, I can see where we have failed. And where I would like to be better. In both cases of my nieces, and in a case where God blesses me with children, and how the conversation I wish to be different. When it comes to my children, when it comes to my nieces, I already explained that we never had such conversations. We never even organized for them to go and see a psychologist. It is only now that I'm thinking about it, and obviously taking it more personally because I'm also living with HIV, and wanting them to understand in a case where, particularly when it comes to the oldest, she's in high school, we've gotten far with our social media, with YouTube, with Instagram, our story is out there, and in a case where one of her friends tells her, I saw your aunt, because we use the same surname, I saw your aunt on the newspaper. She said she's HIV positive, and her being dumbstruck and not understanding like how to answer that is where I feel that I can be very much stronger. So it's an everyday learning exercise that I continuously have with them, about their mom, about me, about my journey. More in particular, also having arranged like for them to see a social worker. There are so many things that we noticed with the middle one, where we start seeing how she reacts to certain situations. For example, when she starts seeing my mom not well, she starts to react, and I can now understand why she's doing that, because she is reminded of what she saw when her mom was sick. She is being reminded of, you know, past experiences and the fear of like what will happen in a case where my mom passes away. So I really hope, guys, by me sharing the story, I do not have all the answers, but what I wanted to emphasize is, please start having such conversations. I'm not saying that we should treat HIV any differently to any other chronic disease, but because of the stigma and the victimization that our children get exposed to, and how certain people use our stories as weapon to hurt them, we need to be in the forefront of such conversations. We need to be better. We're not scaring them or anything like that. In other way, we are reassuring them that, you know, we're still going to be healthy, we're still going to live longer, and in a case of them as well, if they're HIV positive, they're still going to live longer, and they just need to take their medication and be consistent in that, and show them the different things, you know, the beauty of life despite the HIV you know, diagnosis. So I really hope this video has helped, and if you need to reach out to me on social media, on Facebook, I'm Nozibele Mayaba, and then on Twitter and on Instagram, I'm at Nozikamgana. So I hope this has been really helpful, guys. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, bye guys.